Okay, after you do the binding to the radio, I'm going to show you a little feature about the remote control. So there's antenna on the bottom of the airplanes. If you notice, this is the antenna for linking the video transmissions to the controllers. So you want this to be perpendicular to the fuselage. So this is transmitting the video to the radio. Again, the radio is always need to point it at the airplane at all times. So even the airplane are flying away from the radio, you want to point the antenna to the airplane at all times. So wherever you fly, you should be pointing at it. That will give you the maximum receptions to the video coming out from the airplanes. So if you go higher, you point it higher. If you go lower, you point it lower. And if you turn away from you, you can be turning at you or turning away from you. As long as your antenna is pointing to this antenna at the airplanes, you should get a real good receptions of the video transmissions when you're outside flying. The feature on the radio right now is your left hand throttle. This is your throttle which is giving you power. Once you push this up, you can see the blade are beginning to turn. The higher you push, the more power you apply to the motors. And that's the maximum power. So let's bring this back down. That's your control for the power. So this will push the airplane up or down, depending on how you control your rudder and your control your elevate and your aileron. Now elevates. One more feature on this controller. This is your rudder control. If you notice the airplane, if I turn this to the right, and you should see the tail moving. So let's say that you are behind the airplane once you throw the airplane out and flying. So if you turn this to the right, it should turn to the right. If you turn it to the left, it should turn to the left. This is a little different than the airplane technologies that they use a lot for the for this control right here. This is your aileron control. This also allows you to do banging on the left or banging to the right. This allows you to do that too. So you have both controllers that actually do that as well. Now if you want smoother video, you want to use more on the rudder. So more on the rudder will give you a little smoother video turning instead of going on a sideways turning. Because if you're doing a lot on the ailerons, this allows you to bang. So your video will be on an angle a lot of times. So if you wanted to use a rudder to turn, so your video can get you a little smoother turning reaction on your video image. That's all the control for the left joystick. So again, your left joystick has throttle control, which push it forward, and then also rudder control, which turning the rotation of the airplanes at 360-degree turns. And then your right joystick is your elevates, and elevates is going to push it down, then this will go up. Push it forward, it's going down. So remember, elevate to push up, going up, push down, going up, and then push forward, it's going down. And the same as the aileron. So turning, banging to the left, and banging to the right. Now you can see, right now I have autopilot on, so even if you let go of the controller, you can see everything should be on the adjusting itself, corresponds to the motion of the airplane, how it flies up there. So it could be a autopilot glider if you turn off the motors up there. Alignments for the airplanes, before you throw out, make sure that your flaps, make sure they are all adjusted correctly. When you are lining up your airplane on a horizontal looking horizontal from the tail end, you should be able to see your flaps should be all lined up to the wings. If it's not lined up, you can trim it. There's trimming on the controller. So trimming the flap, which is this is your aileron. So trimming to the left or to the right will adjust your flaps. Now you can look at the angle of this controller. They are telling you where at what point right now. So right now I'm at the center of the aileron side. This here is in the center of the elevate side. So if I trim you can see it's going up on the low barcode. So let's go back to the center. So everything should be factory default in the center. You don't really need to do a lot of trimming, but just looking at the airplane, make sure that it's pretty much lined up, and you should be fine. You don't need to do much on the trimming. So pretty much a lot of time is stay in the middle of the trimming process. And then if you look at also one more you have to pay attention is your throttle trim is always on the bottom. Okay, so you don't need to trim anything. This is always stay at the bottom of your throttle trims. This is your rudder trim. So your rudder right now is in the middle. So if you look at the airplane, you should be, if you're holding like this, you should be in the middle. So if you turn, you can see it actually flaps to the whatever side you're turning. So it actually tries to stabilize it. That's you are engaging in autopilot for the controller. Now on the controller, you can turn on and off of the recordings as well. One more thing before I go on to it is that this is your reading. 11.8 volts is your battery reading for the controller. And right now, you already turned the controller on for 10 minutes and 30 seconds. So this is a little timer. So when you fly this out, you have a little timer to tell you how, when you can when you can return the airplanes. To turn on and off on the recorders of the airplane, you press the button over here. Let me see. Over here is your on and off button of the recorder. So when you press one time, you can see the recorder begin to recording right now into your memory card. It should give you the little red readings. And then when you want to turn it off, press it one time. So this the recording sequence is gone. Again, let's do it one more time. Press it one time, and now it's recording into the memory card. And if you don't want to record remotely on your recorder, just press it one time. Now it's off recordings. Autopilot is on the left buttons. So right now it's in autopilot mode. If you want to take off autopilot, turn it one time. Now it's manual pilot. Turn it on again. So press one more time. Now it's using autopilot to auto stabilize. That's the two buttons that you should worry about. The rest of the buttons is for programming. So that's another chapter that we go into for programming of the controller. But in factory defaults, you don't really need to do any programming at the moment. That's only if you wanted to reverse some of the features. If you're flying the quadcopter using the controller, so you can do some programming. But at the moment, you don't need to do any worry about programming at all. So you're pretty much ready to fly the units. One last thing you want before you fly is you want to see the CG of the airplanes. So the CG of the airplane is actually putting your finger at the G area. You can see on the wings. Those are the G areas. So push one finger on one side and then push the other finger on the other side. It should be able to balance itself in terms of up and down like this. It should be able to balance itself if I put it into the 2G area. So you can see it balances itself. I'm pointing right at the G area of my two fingers. If it's not, if it's dip forward, that means you're nose heavy. If it dip backward, that means you're tail heavy. So to adjust your weight issue, you can align the battery further in or forward a little bit out to adjust the balance. But because it's always in auto pilot mode, it's always good to, it doesn't really affect as much. Now, one more thing that you wanted to do is once you plug in the power, don't plug in too long without flying it, because there is airflow right through the hose. You can touch the recorder, it's getting real hot. So you should stay plug in the power. Once you plug in the power, you should be flying within 1 or 2 minutes of plugging in the power. Otherwise, it begins to heat up, and the video will not be as good on the resolution if it heats up too hot. So I'm over, you can see on the clock, I'm over 14 minutes already. So when I touch the recorder, it's real hot. So that's normal, but it doesn't give you good resolution if it's doing that way. So that's why we always recommend, if you're not flying, always unplug it. If you're flying, once you plug it in, unplug it so let it cool down a little bit before you go ahead and fly it, so you have a better video recordings. So again, once you plug in, don't leave the airplane not flying within 1 or 2 minutes. When you finish flying, unplug it right away so you don't overheat the recorders. And then turn off the radio, and that's finish of the lesson for binding and setting up the radio.